The PNC Roundtable.
Hello, this is Ric DeVore, Regional President of PNC Bank, and thank you for listening to PNC Roundtable celebrating its 5th year. It's on this show that we tackle some of the region's top issues with people who truly make a difference in our region.
Welcome in to our PNC Roundtable. Paul W. Smith along with my co-host, Regional President Ric DeVore, and we're proudly broadcasting from the industry preview days at the North American International Auto Show 2014 edition, the 25th anniversary of this show becoming an international show. And Rick, that is a big deal.
It really is. It's a great day for Detroit and a great week, or 2 weeks actually, I should say, for Detroit. It's really kind of symbolizes the rebirth of this region, the rebirth of the auto industry.
It really does. And the rebirth, as you say, of the region, the rebirth of Detroit. And you had a hand in the expansion of this great Cobo Center. And frankly, the Cobo Center is a star as well because of the improvements that have been made. They're a little more than halfway through what they want to do, but it's stunning.
It really is. And, I think the greatest aspect to it is the fact that the public now gets access to the water, can see one of our treasures, the Detroit River, and it's really going to really open up and give a whole new feel. So we're very excited to be part of that. We were one of 3 banks that stepped up and financed that expansion, and we're pretty proud of that.
I don't think, it just occurs to me as we're sitting here, and before we introduce Mike Wall, our very special guest, and let's face it, IHS Automotive is everywhere. Everybody's going to IHS Automotive for facts and figures and everything. Nobody does it better than them, and we'll talk about that. But I don't think the average person knows just how big PNC is.
Well, I think that's correct. And, we're the 7th largest bank in the country. And as of this morning, in fact, we released earnings today, $4.2 billion of earnings for 2013. We beat the street consensus by about 20 cents a share for Q4. But we're a large bank. Our market cap is $42 billion. In reference to some of the local folks, that's much larger.
Well, like for example, let's not mention any other names, but let's say we had a bank that started with C, a C bank, that people are familiar with, having been here a long while and maybe moving some of their office to Texas. But anyway, if you're at $42 billion market cap, boy, I get away with stuff. If you're at $42 billion market cap, what would they be market cap?
About 9.5. And I'm assuming you're not talking about the C as in Citicorp, but that other C.
No, yeah.
And it'd be about 9.5. So we're probably 4.5 times their size.
I am guaranteeing you that at least I and maybe a few other people had no idea.
Well, and that's why, with WJR, we did release the commercial, a couple of different commercials, trying to get the point across of our commitment to the auto industry. And it's about roughly $3 billion of exposure we have to Michigan-based companies in the auto sector, which is why, not to do a commercial for IHS Automotive, but that's one of the reasons why we have a contractual relationship with IHS, is we have a big commitment to the auto industry, and we want to make sure that we're in sync with all the new platforms and really in our projections for what's going to be coming, no pun intended, down the line, so to speak.
Well, it's okay to do a commercial for IHS. They have absolutely earned the kudos in many respects because of this guy and the people he represents. Mike Wall is the Director, Automotive Analyst at IHS Automotive. He brings over 18 years of financial analysis, consulting, manufacturing experience to IHS Automotive, and a primary focus on assisting financial firms like yours and others, suppliers, in their evaluation and understanding of the auto industry, as well as an in-depth analysis of vehicle markets and trends. And I'm hoping that you're bringing nothing but good positive news to us today.
Oh, we've got a lot of good news. Absolutely. And you really have to really walk the show floor to see the phenomenal product and the environment that we're in right now. We're 5 years or so removed from the Great Recession, and the auto industry is back in full force. We're looking for another strong year of sales and production this year. And again, born on very solid product. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed. Just about every automaker has got just a phenomenal either launch vehicle or certainly existing product that's out there that's just doing phenomenally well.
Every automaker on the floor of this 2014 North American International Auto Show has some great product to be proud of. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely.
Absolutely beautiful and reliable. And obviously we lean toward our guys if you will. But the reality is this is a global industry, and we're doing a great job globally. The industry is shaping up beautifully from a sales and production perspective. I can say I think there's going to be 16 million units, but this is what you guys really do.
You are a prognosticator with that.
Is that the number?
That's our
Exactly
number.
the number.
We're sitting at 16 million units U.S. light vehicle sales this year. So I think you've got you've got a second calling. We did about 15.6 million units U.S. light vehicle sales last year. If you remember back in the 2000s, we did broach 16 million units regularly. But back in the 2000s, we had an auto industry that was still very troubled. We had a lot of overcapacity. Automakers were not making a whole lot of money, if any, at various times. It's a completely different scenario now. 16 million units in the U.S. market for suppliers and automakers alike is a very profitable year. So we're looking for some and in all honesty, we figure at least another 2 to 3 years of cycle to work through. We're still in the middle innings of this recovery in the U.S. market. So that's great news.
That is great news, and. We've got Mike Wall, Director, Automotive Analysis at IHS Automotive, with this auto industry seemingly in the early stages, but on certainly firmer footing than we all went through a few years ago. I don't mean to throw water on this, but what's the biggest concern? What are your concerns from your studies?
I think some of the big ones might be those things that might impact consumer confidence. With the debt ceiling, with DC, I never underestimate the possibility of having some issues coming out of the Capitol.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
So there'll be somebody here later that can maybe talk to you about that.
So if we can navigate that.
When the vice president walks by, don't look him in the eye. Oh, no, that was not. That was Barbara Streisand. Sorry, I'm sorry. So we have to be concerned anytime the government gets involved. And that's one of the, at this point, things we can't control.
Exactly. If we can go through the debt ceiling debate and really put that to rest, I think that will go a long way. Consumers are still on the fringe of really kind of pivoting into sort of that want to buy mode. We've been in the need to buy where vehicle age is about 11.4 years. That's average vehicle age. That's an extremely old vehicle fleet. So as your car breaks down, you have to scrap it and get a new one. Well, now we're finally, and it's really born on, again, very great product that's out here, now getting people to say, I want to go out and buy a new vehicle. And that's consumer confidence comes into play. There's a lot of different factors.
And by the way, for those who are typing an email to yell at me, yes, I remember that without the government's involvement, we might not be sitting on the Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, SRT, Fiat, Mopar stand or over at General Motors. Sure. I don't deny that. I, in fact, as much as I don't like government involvement, I realized at this point, since they already bailed out some other people, you may as well help us here in Detroit as well, and it did work. And I don't go backwards on the argument on philosophy. The reality is it worked, and we have a lot more people working, and I'd hate to know or see or feel what Detroit, Michigan, and the United States would be without a General Motors or a Chrysler. I wouldn't want to get there. So you can stop writing the email and yelling at me about government involvement.
When you think about quality, one of the knocks in the past has been on the big three was the quality of the vehicles. Somewhat of a double-edged sword because I think now the consumers are confident in the quality of the product. Mm-hmm. But to Mike's point, the average age is much, much, much longer. But I think in the long run, getting the better quality is definitely the way to go. But I do think the consumer confidence, I don't think a lot of people realize, but the big C, consumer, still runs this country.
Definitely.
And, I think as we taper off that quantitative easing and stop buying as much United States Treasuries, it'll be interesting to see if consumer confidence goes along. But I think if done correctly,
what do you
it will.
think? You do think it will?
We do, and we expect interest rates to continue to remain low. I think since we have a new Fed chairman, I don't think she's going to go and completely throw out what Bernanke did.
She doesn't want to be known as the one that upset the apple cart at least
I don't
right
think
away.
So. And she was on the team before, so it's not like she's unfamiliar with this play, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so, we're pretty confident that if she does this correctly, and we're confident she will, we're going to have a very good 2014.
You feel the same way, Mike?
Yeah, and when you look at the housing market is still in this early stages of recovery, and even the stock market is kind of managed through this early tapering process. So you don't think about it a whole lot when you look at auto, but there's that wealth effect. If I'm feeling good because the stock market is doing rather well, if I'm feeling good because my house is worth more than it was last year, you're feeling a little better about going out and buying a vehicle. And the one last kind of niggling thing we need to see is sort of the job side, the employment, and we're starting to see, here and there. I know we had a tougher jobs report coming out of the last month, but as we start to add more jobs, that's going to be, I think that's sort of the final, the final metric we need to start to see some demand really starting to turn.
Rick, what was the average age of the autos out there?
It was about 11 and a half years.
Yep, almost 11 and a half years.
Oh my
old.
goodness! And let's, for goodness sakes, you take a car from 10 years ago and sit in one of these vehicles at this auto
Night
show
day.
or in your local car dealership. It's astounding the difference and the improvement in these cars
Right.
today.
Especially on the
Absolutely.
technology.
Technology. I was just going to say, the technology side.
It'll
whether
be
it
mind-blowing.
navigation, anybody who sits in any of these vehicles and sees just going into the instrument panel, seeing the inside, it's gonna be night and day.
Now, on the other hand, it might frighten you. And there's been this discussion about all the technology on cars. Some car dealers have actually hired technology specialists to walk people through their new car. Now, the other side of that story is some dealers say, well, the last thing we want is to keep introducing different people. We want the salespeople to know what they're talking about. Since they're there from the beginning of the process, let the salespeople explain how to use the cars. And once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they're not putting stuff in there to try to mess you up.
No,
right?
that's it. I mean, with the new technology and some of the advancements, that's the challenge for the automakers is they have so much technology they want to roll into these vehicles, but yet you have to make it easy to use. Because the last thing you want to get is dinged on the Consumer Reports, report or some other.
And that's
quality
happened
thing.
in
It
this
has.
transition.
Absolutely. So it's been this evolution, and they're getting much better, and it's more rapid. That's the thing. The auto industry, we used to think of cars coming out every 5 to 6 years, a new model comes out. Well, it's trying to come more like the consumer electronics industry. 12 to 18 months is a long time in that space.
And I wonder how that'll affect people's commitment to leases and what length of time leases. I think 2-year leases are pretty common now.
Right. And I think as that segment of the population continues, the younger people that want this technology, I think your point's well taken, Paul. I think the days of 4 or 5 year leases, especially for the 30 to 40-year-olds, I think that's gone
Yeah.
because they want the latest thing.
And there will be
And
incredible changes in 2 years.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And the automakers are responding to that so much better than they did, even a few years ago. So it's been phenomenal to see the speed of this integration of all this technology.
Our friend Matt Simoncini of Lear Corporation came by earlier in our broadcast, our regular morning show.
a good customer, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good company, and they've been a good customer for us. They've been a good partner, and they've helped us in a lot of ways in our broadcasts, and they have supported very specifically the Paul W. Smith Show on WJR through thick and thin, and I will never forget that. But I'm wondering, not specifically Lear, unless you want to get specific, I'm wondering what the outlook for suppliers is right now, given the current state of the industry.
I think we're at a point now where I don't think the outlook could be much brighter. Given the production outlook, we'll probably build we're forecasting about 16.8 million units of light vehicles this year.
Wow.
So for a supplier, we're launching about 36 new vehicles this year. It's an amazing amount of launch activity. So there's no question it's going to be a busy year again for suppliers. But huge opportunity for suppliers that are out there. A lot of them are running flat out. I mean, they're capacity constrained. But we're finally starting to see, and seeing, and working with the folks at PNC, we're getting a lot more inquiries from suppliers that are wanting to expand, wanting to buy new equipment, wanting to, more brick and mortar. We're getting to that point where that investment's now going on, and it's going to benefit them.
And what I'm saying, Mike Wall, and you're closer to it than I am, and I'm wondering too, Ric DeVore, as the regional president of PNC on our PNC Roundtable, if you're seeing this too, it seems to me the relationships between the suppliers now and the OEMs, at one time there was a lot of friction. In fact, I would have suppliers come up to me and I'd say, "How was your year?" And they go, "We made some money, but don't tell anyone," because they thought, well, if they were profitable, one of the OEMs would say, "Wait a minute, you're making money, you're charging us too much."
Yep.
I think everybody understands that everybody in this collaboration, in these partnerships, have to make money. And I don't know. What do you say?
I think you're exactly right. I think the big three and the foreigns know that. Look, job one isn't to put our supply base out of business.
Right.
We all got thrown a curveball, obviously, with the tsunami is a good example of dependence on certain suppliers. And so I think there's a pretty good awareness of that. And, really when you look at like companies like IHS Automotive, let me give you an example of how we use their data. It's not just that there's going to be 16 million units made. Which units, which platforms, which piece of the equipment are you making? Let me give you an example of something that's on TV that I can relate back to. You know the commercial for the Silverado and the guy standing underneath the highway platform and he closes the door and says how quiet it is? Well, that quietness, that trim that goes around that window is made by Henniges Automotive, and we're their lead bank.
Wow.
And they showed that commercial when we did our bank meeting. But, I mean, it gets down to that kind of detail, for us. And one of the things that I was sitting here and I was thinking, we started off the show talking about how maybe there's not a lot of awareness of our commitment to the auto industry or our size.
Or your size.
Well, you're sitting next to the firm in IHS Automotive that purchased an icon in this city, and that was R.L. Polk.
You know what?
And,
I congratulated Stephen Polk, and it never even occurred to me.
Absolutely.
And we bank IHS Automotive, out of a different group because they're based in Denver, right?
Yes.
And but it was kind of interesting to me. I mean, if you talk about what was R.L. Polk, 164 years, Stephen's family,
Yep.
But there's another link where I think a lot of people, just like PNC, I'm not sure they understand. Oh, it's that IHS.
Yeah,
bought.
You're looking at one of them.
Yeah.
It just didn't. I mean, I knew
I
it.
wasn't quite sure if you made that connection.
I wasn't thinking about it at that point. No, and that was a big acquisition.
Yes, it was.
Absolutely. And what you touched on insofar as working with the automakers and suppliers. I mean, we work with the automakers as well, and that it's all about collaboration. I mean, you said that was the key word in that. Automakers have global platforms. They have to be globally integrated and executing on a global basis, and that's why the relationship with suppliers has to be strong. They rely on suppliers to bring innovation. They rely on whether they're their data suppliers or their part suppliers. You've got thousands of parts in a vehicle, and you need to have those tight relationships. And the automakers get that, and we're seeing that. That's why, particularly here in North America, we can talk Europe and some of the other markets, but in North America, because we have reshaped our capacity footprint, we've had some agreements with the labor side. UAW has come to the table as well. It's made for a little bit more of a holistic discussion when we talk about auto here in the U.S.
Holistic and healthy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's extremely important.
Bob,
if we win, we all win.
Bob King's comments just recently about the union understands, and rightfully so, that they need to keep their employers in business.
Absolutely.
And I think there's, you were mentioned, will they allow the suppliers to make money? Well, I think the same thing goes
in the old days.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right.
And I think also there's just much a better relationship between the unions now and the UAW and the auto suppliers.
When you think about it, and that's why this works. And I hope everybody pays attention, writes it down, and never forgets it.
Yeah.
The unions getting along with the OEMs and the suppliers. The suppliers are getting along with the unions and the OEMs. And the OEMs are getting along with their first customer, the dealers.
Right.
I, for one, small-town kid from Monroe, Michigan, couldn't believe a number of years ago when I got kind of immersed in this, the friction that sometimes, I said, wait a minute, you guys are on the same team. You're on the same side. How could you have that? Well, the reality is there were problems.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard much about that anymore either.
No,
and
that's true.
Are we surprised then that things are going well?
No, absolutely. And, a lot of this, it helps when you've got very strong product. You've got more, you've got a better communication and two-way flow with the dealers too. And again, it goes back with the suppliers as well. So you've got, we're kind of set up in this. If it was a perfect storm when we were going down back 5 years ago, the conditions are ripe right now. It's looking very good.
Mike Wall, Director, Automotive Analysis, IHS Automotive, of course, Regional President Ric DeVore of PNC here on the PNC Roundtable. You said, I think, Mike, as we came out, 36 new introductions. Can you give us some of the key introductions planned for this year?
You're looking around the show floor here. It's just phenomenal. One that's not far away from us is the Chrysler 200. It was launched, unveiled earlier this week. Just a phenomenally looking vehicle.
It's
much
an
improved.
Amazing improvement.
Night and day.
And they say the first 200 or the early 200 was a very good car. They just have improved upon that very
significantly.
good car. Yeah.
And you go down the show floor a little bit further, and the F-150 was probably one of the bells of the ball here. And, significant aluminum content. They pulled 700 pounds out of this truck.
It's amazing.
And you're going to see some significant fuel improvements with that.
I had some fine press people doing one of our round tables for industry preview. Daniel Howes of the Detroit News, Tom Walsh of the Free Press, Paul Eisenstein, the Bureau, I think it's thebureau.com we were talking about. I asked them for words, and they came up with power, they came up with green, they came up with fuel efficiency, and the word I use for this show is lighter or lightning, because everybody is lightening everything. Everything's supposed to be lighter, and I'm saying everything.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'd add a word to the F-150 for a Ford motor, and I would add the word courage. Yeah. I think it took a lot of courage to do what they're doing.
To take the most successful vehicle in history.
Absolutely.
And do that.
Yeah, the real backbone of the firm. And I think, they're going to be, time will tell if it was the right move, but I think it is. And I think it's all in service of CAFE standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talk about taking an icon. I'm looking at, as we're here, on the Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, SRT, Fiat, Mopar. You got to read them. There's so many now on their stand. And we thank Sergio Marchione and Gualberto Ranieri and all of the hardworking men and women for providing us with this wonderful stand to do our broadcast. I'm looking up at the big screen, and of course they're pushing the Jeep Cherokee. Now there was an iconic vehicle that people loved the way it was. Now some people didn't like it at all, but the people who liked it said, "Don't change it. What are you doing?" Well, they took it took courage to take the risk, and I'm looking at it live in person and on the screen. I love it. I think it's fabulous. And again, time will tell. It seems to be getting great reviews.
Early reviews. I mean, people like the vehicle, the technology that's involved with it, the integration of the driveline and some of the new technology they've done with that, the innovation with that, and again, innovation, working with suppliers and launching some phenomenal product. And I'm from a camp of, you can have a love it or hate it vehicle and still be very, very successful. It's when you get into the rut of just kind of a humdrum. Same old is when you can get kind of in a rut, if you will.
Right.
So I give them kudos for taking some chances on the design. And at the end of the day, if it's executed well with solid content, consumers will flock to it.
Mike has mentioned, Rick, you mentioned too, that the looming fuel economy standard is 50. Right. What is 54?
54 and a half.
54 and a half. Miles per gallon is you scratch your head, and initially they just right, but they're really working toward that. How are we doing? How are we doing?
It's a real number, believe me. And the automakers are squarely focused on it. We're doing actually, I think, pretty well. Now the first gate is going to be 2016. That's certainly a more realistic number than the 2025, which is 54 and a half. As it currently stands, what you're seeing, and you walk the show floor, you're going to see this turbocharging and supercharging. You're going to see direct injection. You do see some hybrids and some electric vehicles, most certainly, but it's very much it's a toolbox. Think of it as a toolbox with a bunch of different powertrain components and lightweighting. And that's the other theme of this show. You hit it right on the head. Is lightweighting. Virtually every press release we saw this week either let it off or was featured pretty prominently. Yeah, we're 200 pounds less than we were last time. We're 700 pounds. So it's very much a complement across all these different disciplines, and that makes it an opportunity for suppliers of all shapes and sizes, because suddenly you don't have to just be a powertrain supplier to benefit from this. If you can pull weight out of that part, they're going to look at you.
I saw Panasonic, which, by the way, I didn't even know they did a heads-up display. I had no idea. And they've got a bunch of other stuff they do that I had no idea they did. I just think of them as great sound systems and radios and all of that. But they showed me the typical heads-up display and the one they're making. And it's astounding, the weight they've saved. Right. And, of course, doing that, they showed me this panel underneath, the big ones, the old-fashioned one, if you will, and how they have to dissipate the heat. And now they showed with this innovation and this new technology, a little thing like this that dissipates the heat and loses a few pounds.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And I think, I'm hoping that buzz and all these breakthroughs technology starts attracting more young people into auto engineering as a profession. If you really think about one of our gaps, it's probably the engineers that we're minting out of our universities are tending, not like in the old days, to go to automotive. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping the technology, these kind of breakthroughs, start attracting more folks.
I think they are, and one of the reasons is everybody in the industry understands how important that is.
Right.
Everybody understands in the industry that there are more and more jobs available, and not necessarily more and more people trained for those jobs or capable of doing those jobs until we get them that training. Right. And I think, I don't think it's too late. It's never too late, but it is something that they're working on.
Yeah.
What would you say, and from your view at IHS Automotive, would be the key growth technologies in automotive over the next 5 to 10 years?
Some of it's what we've been talking about. Certainly the powertrain technologies are going to be front and center because we are still trying to hit those CAFE standards, and we're well on our way, but there's still a bit of a haul to go. I mean, it's still a hike between there and here. So turbocharging and supercharging, direct injection, the hybrid activity. You aren't seeing necessarily as many hybrids featured prominently here, but the activity is definitely ongoing. So you're going to see a lot more on that as well. And I would say too, alternative manufacturing processes and some of that. The aluminum. The advent of aluminum here in terms of the usage, I think, is going to ramp up significantly. You're going to see a lot of offshoots to that.
I have to say, aluminum came to my mind as well when you were starting to say that, Mike. And then I have to say, well, wait a minute. Yes, it's a big deal because it's on the F-150, the most successful vehicle ever, and it's a risk. It took courage, as you put it, Rick. Right. But the Cadillac has aluminum doors. Yep. The Audi A8 has been all aluminum for a very long time. It's not like nobody's ever used aluminum, and they did a pretty good job building jets with aluminum that was pretty strong and pretty good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and high strength tolerances. I mean, it's not like an aluminum can. People like to think, oh, it's an aluminum can. No, this is military grade aluminum.
And by the way, it's a risk too in the expense. It's more expensive.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely, and that's the offside. I mean, so when you look at the cost-benefit analysis, being CAFE compliant on one of your highest profile vehicle is a big deal, and on a pickup truck no less. So when you balance that across the board and having it out of the box, and being able to say your high volume player is going to be CAFE compliant or will be shortly. That's a big deal. So we're looking for some pretty bright things on the F-150.
You deal with people in the steel industry. You deal, being that shockingly that PNC is a market cap of about $42 billion, and another bank that we all know very well is like $9 billion. I never would have guessed that. Never would have known that. And I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but you do work with a lot of different companies. And though, again, aluminum was used even back when Ford owned Jaguar, they used some aluminum there. And we heard about aluminum blocks in the engines and all of that. But now it's exploding. And Alan Mullally sat right where you're sitting and told us they're going to use more aluminum. Right. So how does that impact with PNC and your involvement with aluminum manufacturers and people like that?
Well, we are the home of U.S. Steel and Alcoa. So,
that's right.
So in Pittsburgh.
Well, you got them covered both ways.
So we're hedged well. But I think really when you think about, Mike alluded to this, when you start looking at the finance arms of some of these suppliers and manufacturers, they're going to have to make sure that they have, they're not used to hedge on steel prices and so forth, where they're going to have to be hedging on aluminum as well, and I'm sure they're already doing that. And, that's where we, kind of come into play and can help them out. But let's face it, I mean, you're also competing with Boeing and a lot of other people that have a big appetite for aluminum and titanium.
Of course, in the airline industry, they're, in some senses, moving beyond aluminum.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Going with these composites because they're lighter and stronger.
Yep. Carbon fiber, magnesium. And before the steel industry starts writing you your letters, I will say...
I don't want any of those either.
I've already talked to them.
The ultra-high strength steel...
There's some great new steels.
Absolutely.
This ultra-high strength that you just mentioned, and they have other fancy names.
They're not standing still either. No. So it's going to be... That kind of dynamic is great for the industry, though, too. So you've got different material technologies working against each other, certainly, but also advancing, I think, the overall bar amongst each other. So it only helps the manufacturers. This is going to be phenomenal to watch.
I would agree with you. I think steel is, they're definitely going to not just stand still on it.
Right.
And the hybrids and some other, composites. And so I think at the end of the day, that's going to be great for everybody, but definitely the OEMs.
Michael, you're saying 16.8 million units for 2014.
Yes, light vehicle production here in North America, and we did 16.2 million last year. So just going to be a phenomenal year. It looks, when you look at the North American market, we're exporting more vehicles. We've got more automakers building capacity here, some of the Japanese automakers and German automakers, and we've got an ongoing demand recovery that we're enjoying right now as well. So that three-legged stool is shaping up quite well.
An appropriate usage of one of my favorite expressions, from your lips to God's ears. 16.8 million would be pretty spectacular.
Yes.
All of our companies are set up to be wildly profitable at that
Definitely.
figure.
Right.
That's wildly good for all of us. Final word from you, Ric DeVore.
Well, if I can, a couple of things. One, in March, I think you're going to be in Geneva, I believe, and we'll be doing our show with Stu Hoffman, our chief economist, another frequent flyer on the show, as him and Mike are really, every year we have Mike and we have Stu Hoffman. I know you enjoy Stu, so that's going to be a breakthrough for us. But another word I wanted to do, and I know Bob Schumann is detained and so forth, but I just want to give a shout out to just the auto show in general and what a phenomenal job everybody is doing here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, next week we have 500 children, pre-K kids, we're bringing to Education Day in conjunction with Detroit Public Schools.
Good for you.
And I know you're real good friends with all the Penske organization, and they're a great client of ours. And we're, again, this year ramping up fifth gear program in association with Penske Corporation and the Grand Prix. So I talked about children earlier, but I just want to emphasize again that there's a lot more going on at the auto show than just the cars.
With the rapidly growing use of the wireless technology, the smartphones, the internet, the kids today are more connected and tech savvy than ever, and that's why that annual Education Day, January 22nd, is a really very, very special event. And you mentioned Penske and the Penske Corporation. This is a family business. The automotive industry is a family business. Look at Mark Royce, whose father Lloyd was there at General Motors for all those years. Mark Snethkamp and his son Mark on the dealership level, and I could name every dealer probably with family members involved.
Absolutely.
And I ran into here at the show, in fact, Greg Penske, Roger's son.
There you go.
And he, all by himself on his own, is an amazingly sharp guy. As chairman and CEO of the Penske Motor Group.
Right.
And I think, he's got a couple of sons. I think it's Greg that operates the world's most successful Toyota dealership in California.
And I think they're the largest Toyota dealership in the United States.
And then I also ran into, the late, great Dick Dowk of, you remember
sure.
AAM.
Another customer.
And Dick and Sandy raised a great son in David Dowk. So
Absolutely.
It's a family business, and it's great to see. It's great to see the new generations and all the new and exciting things that are happening. It really is. Gentlemen, I thank you for being with us on our PNC Roundtable. Mike Wold, Director, Automotive Analysis, IHS Automotive, and our co-host and the boss, really, the Regional President, Ric DeVore. And I'm Paul W. Smith, and I'll be talking to you in the morning on WJR.